Yo, what the is up, chemistry crew? Today we'll be talking about nuclear chemistry. We'll be going over applications, type of radioactivity, and more. We'll cover exactly what you need to pass this class. Let's go. Alright, so let's talk about some of the applications to where you would see nuclear chemistry in real life. So the most obvious one would be the nuclear bomb with nuclear fission and fusion. But there are more too. So first off, let's talk about nuclear power plants, to where they use nuclear fission. They divide the atom and they create electricity. But you gotta be careful, or that joint's gonna turn out like Chernobyl. So another example would be anything to do with radioactivity in general. So you got your x-rays, you got your CAT scans, or anything that you find in a dentist or a doctor's office, or anywhere similar to that, to where you have to get scanned to check your body. Even the radiation that is coming out of your phones and computers have to do with nuclear chemistry, but in those cases, it's very small. Alright, so let's talk about the types of radiation. So first off, we have the decays, and we're going to go through alpha decay first. So alpha decay is where a particle emits 2 protons and 2 electrons, as we can see right here in the image. Uranium, which is the parent nuclide, emits helium-4 and then turns into thorium on the right side. It changes the identity completely because it emits the particles. Next up, we have beta decay, where radium decays into actinium because it emits an electron because of how unstable it is. So those are the 2 types of decays. Next off, we're going to be talking about the different emissions. So we have gamma ray emissions, which by the name emits gamma, and it has no charge and no mass. It has very high energy. Next up, we have positron emissions and electron capture. Those two are like opposites. Positron emissions are unstable nucleus, has an unstable nucleus, and those emit electrons, while electron capture has an unstable nucleus and it absorbs electrons instead. Alright, so let's talk about the valley of stability. The valley of stability is a graph that shows us whether beta decay will happen or alpha decay will happen. So it relies on the NZ ratio, or the N over Z ratio, or the neutron over proton ratio. So if NZ is too high, then beta decay will occur to convert neutrons to protons. And if NZ is too low, then the protons will turn into neutrons by electron capture or positron emission. And keep in mind that the higher the atomic number is, the higher the NZ ratio can be before becoming unstable. But another rule is that after Z, or the protons, are after 83, there are no more stable nuclei. Alright, so we all know who this man is. This guy is Albert Einstein. What did Albert Einstein do? He created E equals mc squared, with E equaling energy, m being mass, c being the speed of light, and that being squared on the right side. So E equals mc squared actually represents the nuclear binding energy. Next up, we're going to be talking about half-life. So half-life is the amount of time that it takes for an element to decay in half from its original atoms. On the right side of the equation, we see N0. N0 is the initial. That is how much we have in the very beginning. The 1/2 represents the half-life. And then we see the T's. The T's represent the time. The T on the top usually represents years, days, seconds, depending on what the element is, divided by however much time it actually takes for its half-life. And then the NT on the left side of the equation is how much of the element we have remaining. So now we just went through 2 different equations. The last equation we'll be going through is going to cover actually the kinetics of radioactive decay. So the equation, natural log NT divided by N0, or NT just like in the half-life equation, NT after the decay, and then initial N equals negative KT is a general formula used to calculate first order rate reactions in the case of nuclear chemistry. This equation is similar to the concentration equation in the earlier units. Alright, so basically, right now we're going to be talking about nuclear fission and nuclear fission. How? We're going to use Valorant. Let me tell you a bit about Valorant. So Valorant is a team-based game that gives students the opportunity to learn more about nuclear chemistry. That's right, a game that talks about and really has to deal with nuclear chemistry. The purpose of the game is for me to plant a nuclear fission bomb to fend off defenders. And it takes a vast amount of knowledge to be able to start and defuse bombs. So, what is nuclear fission to begin with? Nuclear fission is what happens when an atom splits into smaller pieces, right? A chain reaction happens when atoms split and eventually spreads to all the other atoms. Nuclear fusion, the other side of nuclear fission, occurs when two smaller nuclei fuse together to form a bigger nucleus. Alright, so now that we got all that content out of the way, let's get to some of the interesting stuff. So first off, let's start with carbon dating. So carbon dating actually uses radioactivity to find out the date on fossils and artifacts. And I just find it pretty cool how we can find out the age of something from literally millions of years ago simply by using radioactivity. And the radioactive element that is used to carbon date, the carbon is carbon-14. And another interesting fact that I found about nuclear chemistry and really more nuclear energy, and it has to do more with nuclear fission, because that's when nuclear energy comes from, is that nuclear energy actually provides 50% of the clean energy in the United States. With this in mind, I really do believe that we should focus more of our resources into nuclear energy rather than things like solar, wind, and water. And while these things are important, I just feel like if we put more of our time into nuclear, it would just be more beneficial to us all.